right, good morning, everyone. I promise you this is going to be an efficient session, right? It has to be. But it's difficult to follow last night, right? I mean, I know I was watching people behave last night, and what struck me the most were some of those efficient dance moves that were happening in the middle. Later I'm going to take a poll to see who you think was the most efficient dancer, but I say Jason did a really good job. I mean, he really went out there, so yeah. And I'll tell you what's interesting, many of you don't remember what you were dancing, but he does, right? He told me he doesn't drink, so he'll remember. But anyhow, so today we're here, we want to talk a little bit about efficiency. The title of the session is Taking a Long, Hard Look at Efficiency and Strategies to Intelligent Boost Performance. We're going to start with a small introduction. Juan Martinez, Profitality Guru. We are an industrial engineering consulting firm. This November 7th will be 40 years for me in this industry, but nobody's counting. And it's all about how do you apply industrial engineering to drive unit economics. And by way of example, what does that mean? You know, this is a very development-based group. So imagine if you have a 7,000 square foot full-service restaurant or a 3,000 square foot QSR fast casual. How do you make it smaller, right? How do you get into different places? How do you streamline all the resources to drive that unit economics, but not at the expense of sales and throughput and profit? So if anything, to the opposite. You want to make sure you have the ability to do that peak lunch or peak dinner or peak breakfast. But when it's slow, you don't have to have a lot of bodies in the back. So we do that. That's one area. Another one being throughput, right? In this current age, actually one thing the pandemic taught us was that off-premise was superb. I mean, it saved a lot of restaurants, but you needed to have the ability to deliver. And now you're delivering in a QSR through a little window, whereas before you had a lot more places. So we'll get into that as well. We work with a ton of brands. I'm an engineer, so if I sound like an engineer, it's because I am. 65% of the top 100 brands. So we touch a thing or two. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, facilitating this session and having with these gentlemen and share with you their experience. So that's what Profitality is. Dan, won't you mind doing a little intro on yourself? I'm sorry. No.
First, Troy?
No, you go first. You go first.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good morning, Dan Simpson with Taziki's Mediterranean Cafe. And Taziki's is celebrating our 25th year this year. I've been in this hospitality space for 10 years. Before that was background in technology and scaling some startup businesses. And so I really am passionate about really a tech-enabled hospitality. For me, it's all about the people, but then using tech to smooth out the otherwise complicated processes we all face. Taziki's is our menu came out of our founders' head and heart from a trip to Greece many years ago. He's still involved, our chief culinary officer today. And if you were to visit a Taziki's, primarily in the Southeast, but growing to become a multi-regional brand, you would encounter some amazing colorful salads, pitas, and feasts. And also, we do a lot of creative fusion around like a southern lamb burger and baklava cheesecake and some things that usually don't go together. And we have a lot of fun in our kitchens. So right about, we're approaching 100 units this year, and I'm grateful to be here. This is one of the few conferences I love to attend every year.
Excellent. You can put the green there.
Perfect. Hey, good morning, everybody. How y'all doing?
That was a test, by the way. You failed.
Yeah,
You failed. You do it again? Do it again.
Good morning, everybody. All right, that's better. We were a little concerned about taking the hangover time slot this morning. And anyway, good morning. I'm also very, very happy to be here, and I agree with Dan. This is one of the conferences that, since I started coming, I really enjoy. For those of you that I haven't met yet, my name's Troy Tracy. I'm a brand president and chief operating officer with Ascent Hospitality Management, and I've been in the business for 29 years now. And if you do the math, you're right. I started when I was 3, and labor laws relaxed back then. I know. No, honestly, I'm in my late 40s, but I am very, very happy to be here. And I got a couple slides I want to share with you all today because it occurs to me that most of you, and in fact almost all of you I spoke to, don't know what the heck Ascent Hospitality Management is. And so I thought I'd take this opportunity to introduce you to us. So Ascent Hospitality Management was founded to acquire and invigorate legendary restaurant brands. So some of those brands you see here on the screen. So I've been in this industry for a long time. I've done corporate support, I've done franchise support, and we also moved into Huddle House, and it's been my pleasure to be with that brand for the last 10 and a half years. And I've been a franchisee myself with the Arby's and the McAllister's Deli brand as a principal partner. So if I seem scatterbrained to you sometimes, it's all those competing different initiatives in my head all at the same time. But anyway, we founded Ascent a couple years ago to acquire, invigorate brands and position them for growth. Obviously PE-backed with the intent of increasing enterprise value for everyone. Our Huddle House brand is a legacy brand. It does include a distribution and supply chain component. We acquired the Perkins Restaurant and Bakery brand back in 2019, a couple months before the pandemic. I didn't say our timing was good, but it's worked out pretty well. It has worked out well. So 2 great brands there. I won't spend much time on Papa Core Zones. That is a little departure from our purpose in that it was a homegrown Mexican concept developed, launched as a virtual brand, and it's actually done very well for us. So there may be legs for that brand in the future in some other capacity. But back to invigorating brands. So if you haven't been in a Huddle House for a while, or if you remember what a Huddle House is like, you probably remember it as a bit of a diner. And our guests say it is a diner, but we have really, really revised that prototype. We've created a lot of efficiency in it. We've taken a holistic approach to the remodel, and that is a rendering, but quite frankly, we've got about 16 of these built. You'll see them all around the South primarily, and we're growing at a rapid rate. We've added omni-channel. A lot of pickup windows, different positions. We'll probably get into this as we go out throughout today. We've gone through that exercise for the Huddle House brand, and now we're invigorating the Perkins brand as well, and just giving it a nice fresh look and doing that same exercise we did with the Huddle House brand. So thanks for indulging me on that. A little bit about Ascent, a little bit about why we exist and what we're doing. And Juan, I guess back to you.
I'll grab this. Thank you. And Troy has a distinct ability to sort of work in 2 worlds that are similar but different. And he'll touch on that later, that some things that work in one do not work in the other, right? So you got to have the right shoe size to work. So let me walk you through, let's open this up a little bit. I'm going this way. What is efficiency, right? Efficiency, it's, anytime you talk to anyone, they say, I know efficiency, I work on efficiency, and you know what, that may be the case, right? Every time you wake up in the morning and you start your path, if you're like me, you try to take the shortest path and the most efficient path, right? Same thing in the restaurants, right? But efficiency, I always remind folks that there's an output and there's an input. Sometimes efficiency, people take it as reducing cost. You know what, that's true, because that's the bottom part of the equation. But the best way through efficiency is through the top line, sales, throughput, experience. So we can't forget that. There's 2 pieces to it. That's why I have here experience, sales, profits over under, divided by investment. That's an equation for efficiency. So just keep that in mind as we go through this. And then I think efficiency, we all probably realize efficiency is a continuum. What you're going to hear from us today probably works for today, but it may not work for tomorrow. Because the path continues to change, the consumers continue to change, right? The market continues to change. I mean, you've seen some of the great stuff that people have shared with you here about technology, about automation, about all kinds of things that it's not standing still. I mean, my head spins when I look at all this. So how do I stay par with it? But you have to. So, and in the center of it is efficiency of customers and efficiency of employees, both the customer journey and the team member journey. If you do that, and when you do that, and you must do that, the experience of the employee and the satisfaction of the employee and the customers fit. If you work on that, it's going to drive sales, it's going to drive profits, it's going to drive brand growth. And you start again. And you go over and over and over and over again. So it's important to realize that efficiency is not a destination, it's a journey. Right? And what you hear today, tomorrow will continue to move along. So with that in mind, let's get this going with some questions. I'm going to start with a question here. One of the areas that we've been very busy is figuring out how to maintain the off-premise sales that came in because of the pandemic as the on-premise sales come back in. Right? How do you keep that up? Because you want both. You want to have your cake and eat it too. So talk to us a little bit about this omni-channel, and you guys mentioned omni-channel already. from a guest and employee perspective, how do you deal with that in your day-to-day? Either one can go.
Dan, you want to start?
Sure. So let's do a show of hands. Whose dine-in business is greater than 75%? Anybody in the room? I can't see with these glasses or these lights.
Like this.
Okay. Taziki's business 10 years ago when I first got involved was about 80% dine-in, and we were about 10% traditional takeout and 10% catering. And sure, the pre-pandemic, that started to shift for probably everyone here. But we've landed in a place today where our true dine-in represents just under 40% of our business. A massive change. We started with 3,000 square foot restaurants. How do you adjust to not only the physical plant and the adjustments that we've been talking about the last couple of years here at Restaurant Spaces? How do we adjust those physical spaces when now we've got about 30% of our business is purely a digital experience where they're ordering from away and we're delivering it to them, so they never step foot in the restaurant on those occasions. And the remaining is sort of a hybrid. It's the metaverse, right, where they're both placing the order digitally but stepping foot into the store or at least into the parking lot for a curbside delivery. And so we have this completely different experience now, and it's created, yes, omni-channel, but it's really almost the false promise of omni-channel because we weren't built to deliver so many channels. And so just if you'll click ahead there, I just wanted to illustrate, at least in our world, like we went from essentially three different paths that we were trying to execute, and we executed at a very high level, to now we have all these different, on the demand side, all these different guest channels, right? And so we have, whether ordering from the cashier for dine-in or for they want to take away, or first party order from the table, something that we have tested in our stores, and we have about 10% of our units have drive-throughs. But you also have, through our first-party app and online ordering, multiple order types, and lastly, third-party platforms, whether it's the third-party delivery platforms and/or ezCater, and then you add on a virtual brand inside of that world as well. There's so many orders coming at you, and so our challenge as we look at this, and one thing I would assert would be that if we're thinking about inefficiency, well, here's a good way to get there. But I would say that empathy is the antidote to inefficiency. It's at least a good starting place. Start to look where the pain is for both, not just our guests, but also our staff. And if you look at where the pain and sometimes suffering is, we end up not executing these very well, and we end up everything from long lines to promised wait times that we don't deliver on, frustrations, inaccuracies, et cetera, for our guests. But also for our staff, we end up giving them this false choice, this difficult position to be in, where you either end up just turning off various channels, or you try to keep up, which leads to burnout and turnover in an environment where labor is already difficult, right? Sounds like doom and gloom, doesn't sound very encouraging perhaps, but there are some answers, right? So we've spent a lot of time looking at inserting some better technology, some in this middle place, instead of it being sort of dumb load balance or throttling settings that are a bit random if you think about it, and they're all isolated from each other. We've made a major priority for us this year to insert some new technology. We're working with a group called Fresh Technology to insert a kitchen capacity management system that is looking at 100% of all of the orders and looking at both historical and real-time capacity in the kitchen, and either adjusting it for the kitchen through the KDS or providing the guest a real-time adjusted promise time for either delivery or for pickup. And so I think these types of problems are pretty ever present. They're ubiquitous for the industry, and we've got to think differently for efficiencies. It's not just try harder or turn things off. It's not just become really good at dealing with the guest complaints. We've got to think differently about how we manage these omni-order channels.
Something interesting about managing omni-channel, I mean, one of the areas that we work really hard at, it's labor systems. And if you think about each of these channels, they carry with it different demands of labor, right? And I always remind people, I mean, they always ask me, when's automation coming? I say, well, whenever the British arrive, I suppose the British are coming. I have no idea, right? It's here, and you saw it, right? If you haven't been to the Sweet Green in Chicago, go. It's really interesting. It's not a weird machine experience. It is an experience, and it's a good experience. But you want to account for that, because I will remind folks that when a customer orders and pays on their own, to me that's automation, because your employees don't have to do it, right? So as you push those things, you want to account for it, because you can really impact labor very, very, very nicely through technology. Troy, how about you? Talk to us a little bit about customer efficiency and employee efficiency.
Sure. I do not have quite the off-premise that Dan does, but pre-pandemic, our brands ran about 6%. Look, one of our brands operates in very rural markets in the country. The other one, not so much so, a bit more urban and suburban. And the key for us was just finding that hybrid approach between some of the things that Dan just mentioned and really empathy for the employees. And I love the fact that you mentioned that, Dan, is empathy for the employees, right? Because we spend all this time and have spent all this time surviving, right? We go through the pandemic, we're trying to survive. You're putting up a Metro shelf and sticking a DoorDash tag on it and saying, hey, grab it here, right? You guys saw the picture yesterday that had all the monitors at the counter, right? And during that period of time, I'm sure we went into restaurants and saw the same thing. So we spend a lot of resources, we spend a lot of money, we spend a lot of time, research, all these different things, trying to figure out how to make a seamless guest experience. What if we spent that time making a seamless employee experience, right? Where's AI in the employee? Where's AI in their life, how they learn, what they do, right? And you think about where we are today in our business, and my mind always goes to generations in the workforce, right? You know, we have 4 generations in our workforce right now. You could almost argue 5, depending on what you're talking about. But we have 4 generations in the workforce. We have 4 generations in the support center, right? So we got the baby boomers, we got the Gen Xers, myself included. I'm on the young end of that, by the way. Right? You got the millennials or Y, you got Z, and now Alpha's right around the corner. They're coming out. They're going to be the next version of our workforce. And look, very different upbringings, very different learning styles, right? I mean, I refer to Gen Z as the TikTok team member, okay? And managing that workforce, and what we've done and what I would assert is take some of those resources and put that effort less beyond testing your way into success and focus on accessibility for your employees and inches in your restaurant. You got to do both. Accessibility for the TikTok team member. They got a 30-second time span, right? I mean, it's a video, it's quick. You know, you really got to look at generations in the workforce, and that's something we've taken a hard look at over the last year as we try and integrate these technologies and try and make it seamless for our customer. We're also trying to make it seamless for our employee.
That's neat. You know, I came to the realization as we were preparing for this that I was born too early because I have attention deficit disorder. I could have been categorized into this TikTok group. But it's not, as you can see. No, it's not there. One other piece, again, as we were preparing, the whole concept of empathy, right? That's very powerful. It's walk in their shoes. Make sure you take the side of the customer, the side of a team member, and have empathy to what we're asking them to do and facilitate. You know, the center of our world and what we do in the consulting group is the employee. Right? I usually tell a client at the risk of getting fired on our first meeting it's not that I don't care about your customers, it's that I care about your employees a lot more. They're number one, customers are close second. So that's important to keep in mind because it is through them that you're going to get to deliver the brand. So we talked a little bit, Dan, you talked about the technology, being that you're the tech guru in the group here. You know, talk to us a little bit about the tech stack and how does that, and AI, and then Troy, you mentioned AI. I think that's interesting, right? I don't know if you've actually, SoundHound is here, and I've actually experienced going to the drive-thru with that technology. It's pretty cool, right? It is pretty darn cool. Even with my accent, it understood me, right? So it's very interesting. But talk to us about technology, AI, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, so most restaurant operators that I've engaged with never really contemplated getting into the technology business, right? They're like, we're going to find real estate, we're going to open restaurants, train our people, make great food, have a great guest experience, and do it again and again and again. So it's become another source of being overwhelmed, and now we really need to be in the tech business. Like, it's empowering so much of our business. And again, going back to the omni-channels, the idea of owning your data as intellectual property is really important. And not just as some like vague asset, but so you can have empathy with your guests and provide a personalized experience downstream, just like you would in person. The only way to do that is you have to have a way to own your data and a way to leverage that data. So for us, we looked at what was a very advanced tech stack just 10 years ago, became somewhat obsolete, and we had to start at the bottom, right? So start with putting in place data warehouse, something like Snowflake, and then stack on that a CDP like mParticle or Segment, and then smarter marketing platforms or communication platforms that can communicate via email or text or push notifications or in-app messages, et cetera, that very personalized, that is moving us from mass marketing to at least cohort marketing down to one-to-one communication that's very personalized. And to me, this is not about an advertising scheme, right? This is not heartless marketing. This is actually, again, very much anchored in the same empathy and heart, because in the same way if we were face-to-face, if you were a guest at Taziki's, I would get to know you and where your kids go to school and maybe where you go to church on Sunday and find out your favorite foods. And I would anticipate that when you walk in the restaurant, and I would look forward to offering you the new item on our menu that appeals to you, right? Because I would know that information about you. Well, now we're forced to basically try to provide the same level of hospitality without ever seeing the person. And the good news is that's where data can fill the gap. And so from a tech stack, you really need to go back and make sure that all those different channels, you're capturing all of the data, and you can, and then you're leveraging it with the right types of technologies so you can ultimately get back to I'd say a mirrored, like Jason and I were talking about this a few weeks ago about the restaurant spaces now are like the physical spaces, but they're also these digital spaces. Our task, whether you're a designer or an operator or somewhere in the middle, is to try to mirror these two experiences as best we possibly can, right? Anchored in the same customer journeys and same way that we would communicate and listen and respond and serve. We want to try to mirror these two experiences together. So yeah, for us, we had to kind of start at the bottom and kind of rebuild our tech stack.
Interesting. How about AI? How do you think that empowers efficiencies?
We're really in the same boat as Dan just described. Look, with our particular brands, we are we're family dining brands. We're experiential brands. So as you said, mirroring that image. With our folks, our guests and our consumers come in to see the same server every day, right? They know who's here. They go to the same churches. They go to the same schools. Their kids play in the same thing. So for us, as we've tried to integrate AI and integrate our tech stacks, we've run up against a bunch of roadblocks. Our consumers have actually pushed back on us. Mm-hmm. And we've realized that we just went to market too quickly. We tried too many flashy things. Some things worked, some things didn't work. I said it a moment ago, and that's because we tried to test our way to success. And I think you really just have to have a holistic approach to that entire thing. What do our customers want? How do they see us, right? Don't just go after the first thing that seems like it's going to work, specifically with AI, right? Do the homework first. So we're in the process of starting there. So we've done qualitative studies. We're doing quantitative studies now. We're really finding out for both of our brands, how do our consumers see us now? Because it's not the same when they saw us back in 2018, 2019. They see us differently now. There's similarities. But before we try and integrate AI, before we try and integrate these different things, we really need to understand and get our arms wrapped around how our guests see us and the guests we want to have see us so that we can apply the right tool to the problem.
Any thoughts on, being that you deal with two brands that are same but different, any thoughts on how you deal with that, right? Because I said earlier when we started, there's no one size here. You just got to figure it out.
Yeah, that's right. So I think intuitively you'd say, all right, it's two family dining brands. So there should be some synergy.
Similarities, yeah, you think
some
so.
Similarities, right? So we tested a couple, I think, Dan, you mentioned order at the table. Right, tableside ordering. So we did tableside ordering. We tried every device. We did Toast. Is Toast here? Toast's not here, right? All right, I'm not going to hate on him. Don't worry about it. We tried all these devices. And at the end of the day, our servers rejected them. They hated them. Their tips went down. That interaction, that service level, right? We tried different software platforms. That failed at both brands, and our customers pushed back on it, right? I mean, it's like having your order like taken by my teenage daughter. You know, it just didn't work.
There's a picture of his teenage daughter here, so.
Yeah, it is. She's here to remind me.
That's his cue.
Yeah, that's my cue. So, I mean, that was one thing that didn't work at both. Now, on the other hand, we did switch to server banking in the Huddle House brand instead of cashier banking. So we are doing pay at the table. It's a bit more seamless for our consumers. It's easier for our employees. It's eliminated some tip makeup. That worked at the Huddle House brand. In the Perkins brand, didn't work. We tried that there as well. Perkins is based with a bakery case at the exit where you do your cashiers. We thought, hey, this is going to be great. It worked at Huddle. Why don't we go do it there? And bakery sales tanked. So we got out of that real quick, right? So you think, hey, two family dining brands, why wouldn't it work? Another one we tried is call center. So as off-premise just really shot up, we told call center with an AI bot. Just didn't work for us, right? I mean, I'm sure it works for some. Now, granted, we don't have drive-through, so that application is, from my QSR days, I'd be all over that. But for us, it didn't work. The AI bot couldn't figure it out. They couldn't figure out your accent. I don't know what the problem was.
Okay, Ming.
Yeah, but we spent a fair amount of money trying to test our way through it, trying to limit that load on our employees, because even though we got OLO and all the other stuff, again, in our more rural markets, people pick up the phone. They call the same number they've been calling for 15 years, right? And so that didn't work, and we're probably out of time on that question. I got plenty of other stuff that didn't work. But there is stuff that did.
Yeah,
there are things that did.
I can weigh in on one positive AI experience. One example that we looked at was, again, compounded by all these omni-channels, is that we had more places where our guests were trying to talk to us. And that just gave us more ways where maybe we weren't listening very well. And when we realized, once we identified each of the channels and started to look at the volume of feedback, and the vast majority is in the happy face, 5 stars, very positive experience, and that's great. But we looked at it was a mountain of guest feedback, and we thought about how we would staff this to respond to everyone, and we realized that the fact is we just weren't, right? But again, think back to I think about how to plan for digital, create efficiencies in digital by the physical world. If we had a line of customers, Troy, in your restaurants or ours, that wanted to give us their positive feedback or their complaint, I mean, how many would we turn away? How many would we not listen to? No, we'd listen to all of them, right? And if we made something wrong, we'd seek to make it right. And so we said as a company, look, we want to respond to 100% of all guest feedback. So let's identify all the different channels. And so here's what we identified: all these first party or third party different channels, sometimes in the restaurant, sometimes outside the restaurant. And we recognized that we couldn't keep up. We'd have to hire an army of people. The second problem was we realized that army of people, no matter how compassionate, no matter how good copywriters they were, no matter how well they understood the brand voice, eventually they ended up just basically creating a catalog of copy and paste responses. Well, how human is that? And so here's an example. We partnered with a group called Ovation, and we've had great success with them as far as aligning all of our different guest feedback channels into one, and then turning on AI-generated responses. And for us, we looked at the quality and the heart in the AI-generated responses was significantly better than our own staff. And so you tell me which one is more compassionate, which one is more empathetic, which one is more real, right? Because in every case now, they were customized responses. They're calling the person, they're responding by name. They're referencing the specifics of their order. It's conversational. So we make sure we really understand what their pain point was, what their complaint was. We even give them options for how to resolve it. Would you prefer that we refund your meal or we buy your next one? Or a variety of other options. And so it's we're shaping it to make sure it really does reflect our brand voice. But we had to make a decision between do we not respond to the majority of customers or to respond to all of them, which was our choice. And then what was the most efficient way for us to do that while still maintaining the brand voice? And so there are some really practical examples like that are working great for us right now.
Excellent, excellent. I'm going to give you an example of some of my experiences. So if you work with, when you work with a QSR and they want to get more cars through the drive-through, the first thing that comes to mind is what? A second window, right? It's a second window. I need a second window. But then if you dig deep into it, you realize that all the second window did was move what was going to happen at the first window and then wait to what was going to happen at the second window and come to the first window and wait the same amount of time. So you got to go back to the root. You got to go back to the engine. You got to be holistic about it. If the engine doesn't work, you're not going to get speed. Another example I give you is that this is a high-end better burger concept. They suited up the kitchen with clamshells, right? Phenomenal. That's a very expensive piece of equipment. It's got a lot of speed. But it's almost like giving a kid a Corvette, a Maserati, or even an adult does, but you never taught me how to take it out of first gear. You're not going to go very fast because the way the information in this tech stack was being communicated to the back was the same way they did it before. So what happened is as that machine went faster, the orders kind of stacked in the back and speed of service got worse. So a flat grill was working better than a clamshell. What they ended up doing was turning off digital orders because it couldn't work. So we worked on right information in the right place at the right time, communicating to the right place. So my comment to all of you is be holistic about it. You heard it from these two gentlemen. Be holistic. It's just not one piece. Look across what the customer is going through, what the employee is going through, because it's not one piece. It's a group of things. And they were about to take off the clamshells. No, the clamshell's the right thing. The problem's somewhere else, right? We fixed it, and they went from 15, 17, 20 minutes turning off digital to 7 minutes not turning off digital, right? Same equipment. I mean, we rearranged a few of the things, a few responsibilities, but the essence of it was that. You had the engine, you just never taught them how to take it out of first gear. And that's sometimes the solution is there, and it was enabled by tech. And they had the tech, they were just using it wrong. Let's talk a little bit about the industry workforce, right? The least problem all of you have out there, right? And remember I said the center of our world is the employee. So we always talk about the KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid, right? Because if you make it easy for them, they'll make it easy for the guests. So Joe, any thoughts on the state of the industry's workforce?
I didn't realize we still had a workforce.
Oh.
No, seriously. I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. I think, is anyone here, obvious question, but anyone still having staffing issues? Anybody? It's tough, right? It's hard, right? And I don't think it's harder than it ever has been, right? And maybe I'm naive. Maybe I just have to believe that. I think it's the same it's always been. And that may strike some of you like this guy's crazy, but no, I have to believe it. And it goes back to that generations in the workforce, right? If we've all been into, at least I have, we've been into a restaurant and it's staffed. Why is it staffed? Why do they have so many people, right? I got a couple places in my hometown, they're always staffed. People are always happy. Why is that? Well, because those brands and those owners have recognized that they need to meet the employee where they are. Right? Think about, I'll go back to Gen Y, I guess, Gen Y or Gen Z, right?
Is that the group I'm in?
You're in Alpha.
I'm an Alpha, that's
Yeah, you're an Alpha.
the ADD.
Come full circle.
Yeah,
Full circle,
right.
full circle. Look, everyone's got a side hustle, right? Depending on the generation you're in, you want a full-time job. I need a full-time job. I have these responsibilities. And we need to start making efforts to go meet them as opposed to them trying to fit in our box. Mm-hmm. Right? We got to modify our training materials. Like I heard LMS mentioned yesterday. Look, to a Gen Zer, LMS is old. Okay? LMS is MySpace. Right? Now, we have an LMS too. In fact, we're getting ready to revamp that. We're getting ready to relaunch it, and because there's videos and other things, but it's a blended approach of onboarding. It's that seamless experience for employees, and it's meeting them where they are. If they only can work 15 hours a week because they got 2 other jobs and some side hustle and they're going to school, then that's okay. That's okay, and it's one of the most frustrating pieces for me when I'm talking with franchisees or I'm going in restaurants out in the field and someone comes in with a big smile on their face and they got energy, and the manager goes and sits down with them and interviews them, and then they get up and leave, and the first thing I do is I go talk to the manager, like, hey, that's great, did you get another hire? Oh, no, they couldn't work Wednesdays, I need Wednesdays. I just want to smack them across the, like, what, are you kidding me? No. So is it tough? Yeah, but I don't think it's the workforce that needs to change, I think it's us that need to change.
Yeah, I would agree. I think when we had, remember, it wasn't just the pandemic, it was the pandemic and it was the labor crisis
the Great
$15
Resignation.
an hour, right?
Great resignation.
$15 an hour. Been there and done that.
And then it was
That's
supply chain, global supply chain. So it was sort of a series of events. But I really agree with Troy that the restaurant industry had a wake-up call where we recognized that I don't think anyone intended to be taking advantage of the workforce, but we very much accepted and benefited from the fact that it was a low-paying job, an entry-level job, and maybe the first stepping stone in someone's career. And it kind of everybody agreed that, great, we wouldn't pay you that much, and you wouldn't stay that long. And it was fine. Everyone agreed. When I got in the restaurant business and they told me that that average turnover was north of 100%, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. This industry accepts 100% turnover? Like, what industry survives and does that? I learned a little bit more about how, the way the United States thinks about labor in restaurants versus Europe and some other countries. And, they've professionalized the roles more, where they try to hire people and pay them and provide them with benefits so they have a reason to stay. They hire fewer people and set it up where they can stay longer. And that's not always structurally, economically feasible for every restaurant group, but it's a good way to think about that versus the American way, which is, again, we'll underpay you and then anticipate you leaving very quickly, which to me is still a bad model. So for us, we looked at that, and I think for many in the industry, it was a wake-up call to say, we need to go back and we need to listen, we need to talk to our staff and ask them what matters to them. We don't need to sit in a boardroom and have an ivory tower solution to just roll out some benefit that they don't even want, but makes us feel better because we did something. So we very quickly literally talked to every staff member, whether they were new or with us since the beginning. And we were surprised. A lot of them said they were happy with their pay. We also realized we were not relevant in some areas and we needed to increase compensation. And it was a right and healthy thing for us to do. But in other situations, people said, what we really want is, we want daily pay. We want access to our money. And, my CFO is very afraid of this idea. Wait, does that mean we're going to lose them faster? Well, no, it's actually been, we have over 45% of all of our crew staff that sign up and love this particular benefit. We proactively hire a lot of refugees and immigrants and sometimes people that are left out. And their biggest benefit they wanted was a platform, a free platform where they could learn English, because it was the only thing holding them back from promotions. So we listened to our staff. We added 4 or 5 new benefits. We adjusted pay, compensation, but it was based on what they really wanted. The other thing is, I, in my role, had an opportunity to hire a few different people on our executive team, and I made my #1 priority a chief people officer, right? Someone to signal to our whole organization that this is going to drive our organization forward. And this gentleman has brought a lot of new energy, and he builds everything off of hire right, train right, treat right. And he is really helping us transform the systems. Like, yes, going from an archaic training platform, that's a library in the cloud, to a lifelong learning where it's bite-sized and every day you have a clear learning path. We had a lot of our staff say the reason they quit was because they were not trained sufficiently, they were put on the line, and then they got yelled at for not doing a good job when they didn't know how to do their job well. Well, that's on us, not on them. And so we realized there's an opportunity for us to control some of these aspects. One other thing I'll offer to you is the culture index. We talked to a lot of our staff and realized a lot of them had, they like you said, I think every generation and every individual has God-given talents and has remarkable capabilities, but oftentimes we put them in the wrong seat of the bus. And so we found this company that's based out of Texas called the Culture Index, and it's really helping us better understand the core traits of our staff and helping them articulate like a new orienting question for us when we hire anyone. Is how can Taziki's help you become who you want to be? When we meet with them on weekly meetings and periodic meetings, we ask them the question, how can working at Taziki's, how can we help you become who you want to be? To Troy's point, it flips the question, is that you're not just showing up to work 100% for me to pay you 100% of your wages. It's not a utilitarian or transactional relationship. It's now recognizing that every person has a dream and an ambition. They have talents. They want to go somewhere with their life. And if we are sincere in trying to help them get there, sometimes that means they'll stay with us. And we could find a way to have this mutual shared dream. In other cases, we can celebrate the fact that in 4 years, they want to go off and be the first person to complete college in their family. And let's celebrate that. And so the only way to get there is reorient the conversation to who they are and what they want to become and how we can collaborate in that dream.
Be empathetic to the employee.
There you go.
I have it. By the way, I forgot to tell you too that I negotiated with Jason to get paid for this session as we walk out.
Really?
So
Wow.
the check is waiting for us back there.
Drop the mic.
Right, so anyhow, right, yeah. Well, we are getting paid, right? We just, at the end of the day, pay me now, pay me later. But so one question, as we begin to land this and open up for questions from the audience, one topic, two topics, quickly, what keeps you up at night? Now that, you deal with everything you deal, and I'm sure if you're like me, as being here listening to all these great speakers, you pick up other perspectives that make you worry more or make you worry less. It doesn't matter, right? But it continues to help you. What keeps you up?
Are we tabling politics and government?
Politics and government. No. That's
No.
that,
All right. Look, honestly, what keeps me up tonight is the thing that we were just discussing. It's the commoditization of our restaurants in the industry. When I got into this business, I got into it because I loved hospitality. I loved interacting with people. I love growing people and seeing them achieve their goals. Like, to piggyback on what you were just talking about, we did something similar and we got into the Be Great program. And it wasn't about be great to make our company great. It was about be great to be the best person of you can be, right? The old way of doing it was, you get paid for the value you provide, right? And that's kind of how I grew up in this business, right? The harder I worked, the better results I produced, the more value added, the better my pay, the better my compensation. Now it's, we get paid by the value we provide. And it's reversed, right? And our ability to do that in the face of increasing costs, in the face of integrating the wrong technology that doesn't work, and selecting the right stack, and I said it earlier, it's that accessibility in inches in our restaurants, right? How do we make the job easy for our employees? How do we make the job fun for our employees? And, automation has its place. AI certainly works, has its place at varying degrees and across our brands. Those things are going to happen anyway. But what keeps me up at night is, how do we become employer of choice? How do we continue to fuel the machine, and how do we retain our talent? Both in our restaurants, but also in our support center, which we didn't really touch on. But look, staff accountants coming out of college, they want different stuff than what they used to get, right?
Yeah, agreed.
That's probably the biggest one.
Yeah, I would add, real estate availability is definitely a limitation for growth right now. I think us getting right this balance between what do we have, where do we lean into automation, and where do we lean into human connection. We're leaning towards looking at a future where we never want to have a guest take an order through a screen in a store, but we'd be more comfortable with our back of house being fully automated someday, but our front of house being more dynamically human and engaging. Our mission statement is to create an environment that combines modern Mediterranean fare with meaningful human connection. And so we're never going to go away from that, but it's like something we got to get right. Like, it scares our board, it scares our staff, it scares our customers, and there's very few people that are truly early adopters. If you think about the fusion of innovation, right? That the bell curve. There's very few people that are actually excited about all these innovations we're talking about that are robotics or AI driven, and most people are afraid. And so us navigating through that fear is key. And my last point would just be, I think there is a real existential threat about losing hospitality in the hospitality business, right? To what you were saying, Troy. And I think we really got to, as you guys help us design restaurants, the physical spaces, and help us as we layer in the tech side for the digital spaces. I think we've got to, there's beauty in the machine and there's beauty in the stores, and we got to remember that in the center of all this, we're in the people business, and to not lose sight of that as we design all of this future together.
Excellent, very good. So how are we doing on time there? I can't see the time.
We got about 7 minutes or so.
All right, so we're going to open it up for questions, and I have a warning. If you don't ask us questions, we're going to start singing. And you don't want us to do that.
You don't want that.
No,
Whoa,
no,
didn't
no.
know that. Here we go.
It could be worse. Actually, it could be worse. Jason could do his dance from last night. That was. I didn't realize Australians could dance so well. By the way, that shocked me. But it was great.
That was the only warning that we need to start asking questions about you singing. It's clear that efficiency is very important to the bottom line, to profitability, to customer experience. And I love the fact that the conversation has been centered into the employee experience. If the employee is being taken care of, then everything is going to be taken care of. I think the one thing that we all share in the restaurant industry is the lack of training and onboarding properly a new hire. Sometimes we believe that it's because of job entry, it's easy to just start frying or start cooking or come along with somebody who will train you. And then finally, at the end of the day, we didn't have time to train that person. And then that person is in 3 weeks in, and then now we don't know what we're doing with this individual.
Right.
So training seems to be a topic that sometimes we can call it different things. We could call it, well, cost saving. We're not going to pay for training. We're going to hold on that training so we don't have to affect the bottom line. From your perspective on your roles, why do you think the training and proper training at all levels, from line cook to general managers and dish managers, why do you think that always take a step on the side in some organizations or in the industry as a whole? What do you think is the best approach of training for have proper efficiency in our team members?
Yeah.
I'll go. Yeah. So from my seat, the reason why it seems to be kind of the first thing pushed aside is it's harder to quantify the value, right? Like, I don't think any of us would consider buying a piece of real estate and building a restaurant ground up without doing a geotech report. We just wouldn't do it, right? Training is the geotech report for our employee, right? You put the investment on the front end to make sure you're not paying on the back end. So it's a conscious choice. The reason why I think it gets slid is it's harder to quantify. You can determine how much your development cost is going to be, and you can determine what your risk is if you don't do A, B, or C. But it's hard to determine the risk of the employee because you only find it out after they quit, right? So we really have taken a shift in philosophy in that, also with a chief people officer, by the way. And we are laser focused on ensuring that employee experience is equivalent in value to us and our company and our people, as much as real estate, development, construction, finance. They have the same value, so they deserve the same resources, even though it's harder to do the equation on the math. So we've moved to a blended learning. We're still working through it. As Juan said at the beginning, what works today may not work tomorrow, right? But it's really a conscious choice in my mind. But that's why I think in the past, both our company and the other company has been with have kind of let it go, and we've paid the penalty for it. So I think it's time to make that trend shift.
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. I would say on one hand, what I've observed is there's this like hardline, old school restaurant operator perspective, which is like, you got time to lean, you got time to clean, you got time to train. We just squeeze these things in. The problem is, back to not blaming everything on omni-channel, but the level of sophistication that and complication that we are now asking managers to lead through, there's just not quite as much time to lean, clean, or train. And so I think there's this old school idea that just doesn't want to actually budget time for it. On the other side, though, I think you have sometimes people that lead training departments don't really understand restaurant operations. And so they create a training schedule, even when I got to Taziki's, a training schedule that has completely unrealistic timetables as far as, well, this person's going to be hired and go through 8 weeks of training. This person's going to get hired and go through even the most basic job, 2 weeks of training. Well, so the operator immediately rejects this and says, this is not real world. Therefore, I'll just reject it wholesale. And the pandemic was a gift in many ways. One way, because we all learned a middle road, which is, guess what? When you're really desperate and you're just trying to find someone to come in, you can train them in 1 day. You can put them in the role, and then you continue their training. So we found a middle path where we said, let's figure out what station ready is versus fully trained. And we divided that into 2 different buckets so we can all agree on what station ready is. That takes 4 hours. That takes 2 days. right? And so now I can hire someone, I can put them through minimum training, because now we're all gonna commit that we're always gonna go through that minimal training to make sure they can start the role. Then every afternoon, if there is a through period anymore, we're gonna take that and continue their training ongoing. So it's a key question, because you're right. Efficiencies is not just about innovation. It's not just about what are we going to do next that's big. It's taking all that we do and to do it better, which doesn't happen apart from training our staff.
Yeah, and that's, as you bring that up, I always think about the restaurant cycle is you have a slow period, then you have a peak, then you have a slow period, and you have a peak, and if you're blessed, you have another slow period and another peak, right? The reality is, at that peak, you may need 10, 15, 20 people, but before that, you only need 3 or 4. So what is it that new employee, what chunk of the whole holistic training can you teach them so they can be effective at the peak and learn the rest later, right? How do you do that? So thinking about training is they don't have to learn, they don't have to be trained for 2 weeks. Is there a piece in there, to your point, 4 hours that I can teach them? Now they can be in the heat of the battle helping me when I need it immediately. So good points. Any other time for more questions?
1 minute left if someone wants, if we can answer a quick question.
2 minutos, like in a basketball game, right?
Oh, yeah?
You had mentioned about trying to mirror the guest experience, not only in shop, but our online guests are just as important. What are some examples that you have of how you've been able to do that effectively?
Yeah, I can offer one in our mobile app experience, right? Moving away from where the first thing a guest sees is our entire menu. It's difficult to navigate through in a little tiny piece of real estate on their phone, and switching that to what we can do more what we do more so in the restaurant, which is to notice who they are, offer them basically the thing they've ordered the most in the last 6 months through the mobile experience or their past orders. So I'm teeing up more personalized recommendations based on what they've ordered in the past or things like it. And the last thing I want to show them is the full menu, because it's probably not what they really want to walk through. It's more painful. Likewise with the rewards program, going from just earn and burn to now let's offer up different, more personalized rewards that are curtailed to that individual based on what they've ordered. So things that I would try to do in person by knowing them and listening to them and trying to serve them, I'm trying to emulate that in the app. Anything else, Troy?
Actually, we are just starting what you described, and I'm glad to hear that it's working well for you. And that it's possible. So we're kind of in the same boat.
Yeah, I remember way back when Domino's used to brag about you could order the pizza in a traffic light before the traffic light turns green, because they've set it up in a way that there it is, press the button, it's done, right? So I always said they're a tech company first that sold pizza, right? So they got it, and the market rewarded them accordingly. So it's important. That goes back to the customer journey. Be empathetic to it. What do they have to go through it? I'm the type that picks up the phone because I don't want to deal with this freaking apps. I mean, it just, you notice I keep putting my glasses on and off. You know why? I can't even read the letters. But it's good info. How do we do that?
Yeah.
Anything else? We're good?
Look, Dan, Troy, and Juan, thank you so much. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you.